Hello everyone, and welcome to another wire wrap video. My name is Jim McIntosh, and this week's video is really going to be interesting because it's two projects and possibly kind of a third. I'll talk more about that later. But recently I had a video on 3 ways to kind of beat the recession by selling your jewelry, and one of those was really diversifying your price point, coming up with some lower cost items to show to people and to sell to people. This video, this project rather, it really highlights 2 ways that you can do that. And we'll talk about it as we go through. But the first way I'm going to show you is by making a ring. Let's take a look. Begin by talking about some of the tools. First of all, we'll need some pliers. So these are chain nose pliers. We'll need some round nose pliers, and we're going to be using these quite a bit in this project. You'll need a pair of flat nose pliers. These will help us move some of the wire as well to get it into position. You'll need some wire cutters. These will obviously be there to cut the wire. Makes sense, huh? You'll need a rawhide mallet. Now, rawhide mallet helps be able to shape the metal without marring it, without flattening it, without causing it to have any cuts or anything in it. This will leave it nice smooth shape to it, and we'll get it to where we want the wire at. You'll need something to measure with. You just got a plain old ruler because we're going to need to measure out the wire. A few optional items, a bench block. We probably won't be using that in for the ring, but this is definitely something we'll use for the earrings that we'll be making, as well as a chasing hammer. Now, this is also something optional that we'll be using, and I'll show you on the earrings how I use this particular hammer as well. And in the earring video, the earring project, you will definitely need some painter's tape. Painter's tape, painter's tape. This is the greatest stuff. I see so many other people out there making different projects, and they've got wire all over the place. And it becomes difficult to use the wire. So painter's tape, small piece of painter's tape, will hold everything together so that you can work on it, keep all your wires in a nice place. So it makes the project that much easier. And in the earring project, I will definitely show you how this happens. And I am really weird about my painter's tape, so I have a pair of scissors because I like to cut them nice smooth edges with it. And since we'll be using round wire and we'll be cutting it, we'll end up with some sharp edges. So just some type of a small needle file. I'm using a triangle file here. You can use a flat file, but anything that's got a flat face on it so that you can clean up those edges would be great. So let's get on to the project. So for this project, the only materials you'll need is a 6-inch piece of round 18 gauge wire. Now, I'm using sterling silver. You can use whatever round wire you like. Some people like to use copper or some other type of wire, but I'm using for this project 18 gauge sterling silver wire. And I've cut this piece, and I've already been straightening it out, but all you need to do to straighten your wire out is to really run it through your fingers and give it a little back pressure to take some of these curves and curls out of it. You can use a polishing cloth also. Some people have sensitive fingers, and this could really hurt their fingers or cut them in some cases. So you can use some type of a cloth, or cleaning cloth would be great to really kind of clean that metal up. So now that we've got our wire cut, let's put it on our ring mandrel and give it some shape. To shape the ring, we're going to use a steel ring mandrel. Now, a steel ring mandrel is great because it's nice and heavy. It offers you the resistance, so if you're using a mallet to shape things, you're getting a nice firm steel resistance from this. Now, the best way to use this is to take this larger end and put it into your hip someplace where it's not going to slip or hurt you. That's important. You don't want to get hurt doing this, right guys? We don't want to get hurt. And then I take the smaller end and I put it against my workbench, nice firm surface. That gives me the stability to then take this 6-inch piece of wire and shape it around the mandrel. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to find the approximate center. So that's pretty close to the center of it. And you're going to set it over the size 5 ring. We're going to make the ring shank smaller because what happens when you shape things around a ring mandrel, especially metal, it tends to spring back out. So you want to make a smaller ring shank so that the finished piece is a little bit larger. So take this, put it over the number 5, hold it with your thumb, and then take each side and bring it around to the other side of the ring mandrel. So now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to bring them around. Now, you'll notice that as I have been pulling that, it springs back. So this is what you get. This is what we have, is we've got a ring shank around the ring mandrel, and we've made this little loop right here. Now, it is much larger than a 5. Actually, it's more like about an 8 right now. So to bring that back down to size, we're going to squeeze the 2 sides of the ring shank so that it's much smaller. And if you put it back onto the ring mandrel and bring it down to about a size 5, that's pretty close. So now to shape this, take your mallet, your rawhide mallet, and we're just going to tap the ring shank against the ring mandrel, and that will bring that shape in a little bit. So you may need to squeeze just a little bit. And you want to try and get the 2 sides, these 2 end sides here, kind of even. So that's what we have. So we've got these 2 sides, and here is our adjustable ring. So now let's give this a little bit of style, and that's what we'll do next. So now that we've got a ring shank made, we've got these nice pieces out here. We just took this off of our ring mandrel. What we're going to do is we're going to take these top pieces and we're going to give them some shape, some curves. Now, let me show you. This is one of the ones I've done recently. And what we're going to do is we're going to give these curves that I've got across the front of this. To do that, we're going to use round nose pliers. So let me grab my round nose. And we're going to want to put them in between these wires. Now, if you notice, there's not really a lot of space here, but right here around the middle, just off-centered from where these two really kind of cross over, I'm going to put my round nose pliers, just like this. And I'm going to take the end and I'm going to curve it across, giving it its first curve. So if you remove that, you can start to adjust that. So you can push this in. Now, like I said, we're using deadsoft wire, so this works. It's easy to work this wire. It moves very easily. Okay, so now going a little bit further on the opposite end of that curve. So we're going to position right about here. And maybe a little bit, let me show you where I'm putting this down the wires. So I want, notice that your round nose have a taper. And this will tell you how big of a curve or loop you're going to make. So if you want a bigger loop, you move it down. If you want a narrower loop, you move it up. I'm right about somewhere in the middle. You can put it anywhere you want, but the important thing is we're just moving the wire. Now notice I moved the wire over itself, and that's going to kind of create a deeper loop right here. And then if I undo it, it gives me a tighter curve in there. Okay, so I take that out. Just kind of look at what you're doing and see what you've got so far. Okay, so that's what I've got right now. And we'll continue just to make another narrower loop. And all I'm doing is I'm just working this into a nice shape. Now, this last section here, I'm going to kind of go in here and I want to bring it into itself. So I'm going to kind of curve the end with these round nose, just like that. Notice I got a little bit of an overlap right here, so that's easy to fix. We'll take our wire cutters and put them in my hand here, and we will... Ooh, did you hear that thing shoot? I'm in my own studio, so that means I get to shoot wire across the room. If you're in with a bunch of other friends doing this, please make sure that you guys are wearing safety glasses or you don't shoot somebody in the eye with a stray piece of wire. So now I'm just going to kind of curve this around. So this is what we've ended up with. Got a nice little design here. And I'm going to want to straighten some of this up into a design. Okay, so that's what we've got. We want to do something similar with the other side now. So now notice this is where the center is, right here. I'm going to now take the wire. I'm going to take my round nose again. And I'm going to position this just off center, just slightly. And I'm going to make one loop. Okay, so this is the bottom side of the ring. So I'm going to make that loop. There we go. And now I'm going to make one big circle. So I'm going to do something similar to this, but I'm going to make a big one. So I'm going to make kind of a loose circle here to finish this off, because this will be the section that's kind of up against the knuckle area of the finger. See? So let's cut off that excess wire, and we will play with this just a little bit. I'm going to hold it this time so I don't shoot wire across the room. There we go. See, so now I've got a nice loop. So let's fix this a little bit. Let's bring that in. And I'm going to grab my round nose. And I'm going to keep turning this slightly. I may have to trim some more of that wire off. Okay. So that's what I've got. So yeah, I need to trim this time on the bottom of it. Trim it right about in there. There, we didn't shoot wire again. And let's take a look at it. Okay. So let's squeeze that loop. There. We need to squeeze it just a little bit more. There we go. And now, see, now all I'm doing is just kind of maneuvering the wire to come up with just my design there. And that's it. That is all to it. So now, there. You see, that didn't take very long, did it? Now, really, there's nothing more you have to do. Check it, though, for rough edges. Check and make sure you've got everything kind of tucked in. See, I don't have this loop tucked in very well. There. So that didn't take very long. And there's a few other things you can do. We can put it back on the ring mandrel. Let me grab my ring mandrel here. Now, I'm not doing this up against my bench at the moment because I'm not sitting down. I'm kind of hovering over my camera as I film this. You guys should really see the precarious position I'm in just to film this, but I'm kind of hugging my camera. But what you can do is you can make this kind of a rounded ring, a little more so by kind of tapping the ends of those loops flat against the ring mandrel. Now, when you're tapping things on the ring mandrel, when you tap things onto the ring mandrel with a rawhide mallet, this does two things. This not only will give it a rounder shape. Let me take this off and I'll show you what I mean. You see now, notice the roundness of the design, but it also will harden this. It will harden the design so it's a little stiffer, and it will hold its shape much better. And we'll want to do the same thing with the shank itself. So I kind of reshape this. I'm going to bring this back up to about a size 5, and I'm going to kind of hammer it a bit around the outside of it against the ring mandrel so that it hardens the metal. Okay, and that's it. That is all that needs to get done. Polish it a little bit. When we do a little bit of work on our earrings here in just a minute, I'll show you how to flatten some of these edges with a chasing hammer, and that will really kind of add a completely different design element. Okay, so that was a really easy ring to make, wasn't it? And it's very low cost, and you can make money by selling that, especially when you're doing craft shows. Let me show you now how you can take the things you learned in that ring and you can apply it to earrings. All right, let's take a look. Okay, I wanted to jump in here real quick just to let you guys know some really exciting news. We are now offering live online classes, and each class will go over a different project. So there's lots of things that you can learn from these live online classes. The good thing about them being live classes is that it gives you an opportunity to ask questions just to make sure that you're doing the technique right, or that you understand why we're doing the technique this way. It's great interaction between us just so that you get the most benefit. And that's unlike these recorded tutorials I do. You can't ask questions, can you? So these are great way to learn to make wire wrap jewelry. The other good thing is we're keeping the classes small. By keeping the classes small, you're going to get that individualized attention. So space is limited for each class. So stop by our website. It's right here. And make sure you sign up for a class now. So let's take everything we just learned making the ring, and we're going to apply it to earrings. Now for this one, we'll need not one piece of 6-inch 18 gauge round wire. We'll need 2. So let's cut 2 pieces of 18 gauge wire. This one's kind of a mess here, so let's straighten it up. See, since it's dead soft, it works really, really easily. You can get all these bends and everything out. Okay. So there we go. Got most of it out. We're not going to really worry too much about it. Now, grab your round nose pliers, and we're going to make a hook on the end so that the ear wire can loop into it. So we're going to make a loop, and I'm going to put this somewhere around here, around halfway down, or excuse me, right at the end, not halfway down, but put it right here at the end. And we're just going to roll the pliers and push the wire into it to make a loop. Okay, and then so that it centers it, we're going to then bend it back. So now we got a little eye. Okay, do the same thing with the second wire. So about the same spot, halfway, make your loop. So here's our loop. And then we're going to position the wire so that I got one of the jaws right here at the bottom of the loop. And we're going to bend the long end of the wire backwards, centering that eye. Okay. This is where the painter's tape comes in. So I just took and cut 2 small pieces of painter's tape, and the painter's tape is going to come in handy so that we can keep the wires in place. So set them aside. I'm just going to stick them to my desk right quick. And I'm going to take the two wires, match up the loops so that the loops are exactly opening on the same side. So let's play with this for just a second till we can get it. There we go. See, so I'm going to match them up. See, so notice they're matched together. And I'm going to take a piece of that painter's tape and I'm going to put a piece of that tape right over the loop. See, so that's what I got. There's my loop. And then I'm going to take this longer end of the tape and I'm going to bring it around the other side and pinch it together. That's going to hold the top part of my wires together. Now, we're going to need a second piece of tape. So run your fingers down your wire till you get to the other end. So right here. And I'm going to take another piece of tape and I'm going to make a little flag. Put the tape on there and there. So now I've got the two wires together. They're held at either end. And we're just going to kind of run these wires, run our fingers up these wires just a little bit, just to get them all working next to each other and working nicely. There. See, so now they're nice and straight. They're even. You see how painter's tape can help keep your wires together and you don't have wires going everywhere? The reason why we did this is we want a pair of earrings. Our earrings match. They match with one another. So to get them to match perfectly, or as close to perfectly as we can get, we're going to make all these loops and turns. We're going to do them together. So with flat nose pliers, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start here just under the loop, so you can see the loop through the tape. And you're going to make your first bend. Just like that. So if you look at it, there's our loop at the top. See, so let me come just a little bit closer here. So there's our loop, and here's the bend we just made. Now, when I make earrings like this, I think wide loops, and then I make them smaller towards the bottom. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can make circles and all kinds of stuff with this. We're going to then, now we're just going to start again. So I'm going to come out just a little ways from here. And I'm kind of towards the bottom of the pliers. And I'm going to make another bend in the opposite directions. Now we've got a loop there. So now I'm going to come over here, a little ways away. I'm going to do it again. This time I'm coming just a little bit higher up because I want these loops to get tighter also as we come down the earring. So now I've got this loop there. Now look how wide these earrings will be. Okay, so now the next one I'm going to bring it in just a little bit. So this next rotation I'll go right about in here. And we'll go that way with them. Okay. And now this next one's going to be just a little bit closer still. And we're going to come that way with it. See? And then our final loop, we're going to use the rest of this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll a nice big circle at the end of this. So I'm going to roll this using my round nose pliers. I'm going to roll this into itself like so. And now we can take this painter's tape off, and it gets sticky on your fingers, but it won't stick to the metal. And sometimes it gets trapped in there, so just take some pliers. I'm using chain nose here. I'm just going to grab a little bit of this, and I'm going to pull it off. There we go. So now you've got two earrings like that. So let's take the rest of the tape off and I'll show you exactly what we ended up with. So here we go. So now we've got two earrings that are identical to one another. Now from here on in, we're going to be doing a little bit of housekeeping, as I call it. So we're going to kind of move these around a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Until we get a design that we're kind of happy with. Here. And you can use some pliers here. I kind of gave this a little lump. There we go. And we're going to do this. I'm going to open this up a little bit. And then I'm going to turn, let me actually grab chain nose and roll this into the middle. It's a little bit more. Okay, so you see how we're just kind of working some of this just a little bit at a time, making a pair of earrings. You got to also be careful you don't mess up your design. I'm notorious for that. Let's clip this little loop here a little bit shorter. Be careful when you're cutting things that you don't shoot yourself in the eye with them. I'm notorious for shooting these wires across a room. Thankfully, I work in my own studio by myself. All right, so that's a little squat, so maybe we'll just open this up just a little bit. There we go. Okay, see? So now you're just going to do the same thing with the second earring. You're going to kind of, the first thing you want to kind of notice is that the loop at the bottom needs to be cleaned up. Notice how there's a difference, so let's kind of center this a little bit better here. So now I just work this second one. And I'm going to go ahead and pause it here for just a second while I do some of this little bit of work here to get these to be close to one another so that they look similar. Okay, so now that's about what we got right there. We've got two that are pretty close to the same. Now, they're supposed to be a mirror image of it. Actually, let me do one more thing. I noticed that loop is still just a little too long here. There we go. And I'm gonna roll this in by hand. There, that's a little better. There we go. So these are supposed to be mirror image of each other. So just take one end, flip it over. I like to flip them over so that the loops point towards the middle, but it's up to the person wearing them, really, which way they want to wear them. But this gives you a mirror image of each other. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add just a little bit more style to them. And to do that, we're going to bring in our chasing hammer and our bench block. Now, bench blocks are great. They're fun to play with because they make a lot of noise. I put my bench block on top of a piece of cloth. Just took a small little towel, little shop towel, folded it up. This will cushion the sound as it hits, as you're hammering on it. Another thing you want to do is the area that you're hammering. So let's say we're going to flatten this with our chasing hammer. I always put that portion of it on the bench block, and I keep my fingertips off the bench block. This is going to help prevent me from hitting my hand. So we're going to flatten these curved ends with a chasing hammer. All we're doing is just giving them a little hammer. And we're going to do the same thing with the bottom. And I don't want these paper thin. I just want them to spread out a little bit. Hitting it with a chasing hammer will also harden the wire. It'll make it nice and hard so that it keeps its shape. So let's just kind of go around. And also to make this fatter, if you hit at this type of an angle. So you're hitting and moving as you're hitting. So notice that will paddle this out a little bit better. Okay. Now, as you're hammering, you also notice that the design will kind of change a little bit. You'll have to kind of bring everything back in order. So there we go. And got a little more hammering up here, like that. Okay. Okay. So there we go. Now, the next thing you want to do is you also want to use your rawhide mallet on some of this too, because the rawhide mallet, hitting it with this will also harden the wire, but not flatten the wire. So those parts that didn't get flattened, we're going to want to use this mallet on to harden it. There we go. Okay. So that's what we got so far. So let's set that one aside, and we'll do the same thing with the second one. So we'll start with the chasing hammer. Okay. And of course, now the last thing would be the rawhide mallet. We're going to want to harden some of that metal up. There we go. Now let's make some adjustments to this. Fix it again so that it looks right. And we might need to use some pliers here. Sometimes I got the metal too hard. I can usually move it with my hands pretty well, but there we go. See, so all these need now is ear wires, and you've got a nice pair of earrings. So in this next segment, let's talk about how making these projects can help you out. Now, those are some very easy projects, and they're low-cost projects. And that's important because you want to have those various price points. You want to have your higher-end jewelry. You want to have something in the middle, maybe a little less elaborate than your high-end stuff. And then you want to have some of this lower-cost materials and items to offer to people. And it's important to do that because you're going to get all different types of people coming to your craft booth. And you want to make sure that you have something appealing to each and every person that visits. Also keep in mind those earrings, what we do in our booth is we will display them kind of on a standing display. So the display is kind of up. So you have all of your earrings in this display. As people come by, they can see them, and that kind of draws them in. Now, they may not be looking for earrings, but when they come in, they'll see not only those earrings, but the rings you just made, and then all of the other pendants and bracelets and everything that you have to offer. So this lower end items may appeal to them to make them come into your booth. They're great items to make. If you notice, the single wire only costs you about $1. And what we do is we make sure that we put a sign on each of the displays for these lower end items, showing just how cheap they are. And then we make sure that we have it says sterling silver, if that's what we're making it from. Or if you're going to be making it out of copper, of course, say, real copper. Because a lot of people will look at the lower cost and they'll think, this is cheap, made from cheap materials. But you need to assure them that you've made this out of real materials. So these are just two great sellers that we've used over the years to really help diversify our jewelry in our craft booth. I hope this helped. I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so that you guys can get alerted to all of our new videos. All right? Thanks for watching. Thank you for coming by, and remember, practice, practice, practice.